Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to our Ramadan Reflections 2025 series, The Soul's Path Home, Divine Wisdom on Death and Beyond, where we continue to reflect on the stages of life and eventually death from the perspective of the Quran and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon all of them. Every journey has moments where one must account for their actions, whether it be something as mundane as arriving home after a vacation and having to answer questions from immigration and customs, to the journey of the soul into the next world. It's really no different. We must take account for ourselves. Now, when returning from vacation, we face questioning by immigrations and customs officials, a process that bears a striking resemblance to what we will face in terms of the questioning in the grave, and perhaps even beyond. Now, just as we must declare our purchases and activities to the border agents, as Muslims, we believe that after death, two angels will visit the deceased in their grave and ask them multiple crucial questions about their faith. In both scenarios, both in the temporal world in our travels and also in the grave, honesty and preparedness are paramount. Now, at the border, obviously we have to truthfully declare our purchases and activities, with potential consequences for false declarations. I'm sure we've all faced this before when we've traveled overseas and returned home. Well, similarly, when the two angels enter our grave to question us, whatever we respond will determine our fate in that barzakh, in that grave, in that realm between the life of this world and the day of resurrection. However, there is one stark difference. We may be able to successfully tell untruths to the border officials and get away with it, although I would never recommend trying it. However, what we answer in the grave cannot be made up or faked. What will come out of our mouths is only what we truly believed and lived. The customs process, where we must account for how much shopping we did, what we bought, and what we're bringing back into the country, it serves as a worldly reminder of the ultimate accountability in Islam, as we will be asked some of these same questions: what we earned in this life, how we earned our money, and how we spent it. Now, traveling and going through such interrogation in this temporal world, it should encourage us to have reflection on our own deeds and choices while we're on vacation. Much like the anticipation of questioning in the grave must motivate us as Muslims to live righteous lives. This parallel that I've just presented to you underscores that our actions in this life have consequences, both immediate and eternal. It reminds us to be mindful of our conduct when navigating our spiritual journey through life. Now, coming into the theme for today and the topic of the questioning in the grave. After the burial, when the family and friends return to their homes, the deceased enters a new realm. The grave now becomes their new world, similar to how they left the womb of their mother to come into this world. And it is at this point that the questioning by the angels begins. The Quran beautifully talks about this in Surah Ibrahim, chapter number 14, in verse number 27. And what does Allah say? He says, Allah will keep firm those who believe with the firm word in worldly life and in the hereafter. So who really is asking these tough questions? Who are the angels? Who are these individuals which are responsible for this questioning in the grave? Well, upon that first night in the grave, two angels commissioned by Allah are sent to interrogate the beliefs of the person that have just been buried. According to some of the hadith, they are called the two guardians of the grave. Now, varying hadith do provide different names for them, and I'll get into that shortly. I want to begin this, and preface the discussion with that point. Now, one of the two angels stands at the right side of the dead, and the other at the left side. And they start interrogating the person by asking them various questions. Now, let me also mention and say this, that most of the scholars of hadith and Islamic theology, they believe that it is the same material body that one had in their life in this world to which the questions are addressed. However, the philosophers believe that another body, what they term as the barzakh body, which is what the questions are addressed to, obviously with the soul present, is how this questioning will transpire in the grave. If the departed was a faithful and pious believer, they'll be able to easily answer the questions. Perhaps with the help of the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah bless him and his family, and the immaculate Imams. The angels that appear to them with a pleasant face and are named Bashir and Mubashshir, these are the angels that come to the believers. They give the good news of going to heaven, and they expand the grave with divine bounties. Now, what is the content of the questions? Do we have a sneak peek into the questions, an open book exam, so to speak? Well, the questions asked by either Bashir and Mubashshir or by Munkar and Nakir, these are the most important events of the first night in the grave. According to the frequently narrated hadith, the two angels will ask the following: who is your Lord? Who is your prophet? Which Imam or leader did you follow in the world? Pretty simple questions, aren't they? Well, according to the other hadith we have, further questions are also going to be asked. And we need to know the answers, and we have to have lived the answers. We may be asked, what God did you worship? What prophet did you believe in? What was your religion? Not what you were born into, but what did you live as a way of life? What sacred book or scripture was your guideline, was your manual for life? Which Imam or leader did you follow? How did you spend your life? Did you spend it in sin, or did you spend it in piety? How did you acquire the money that you had, and how did you spend that money? Who were your friends in this worldly life? Who did you hang out with? Who were your influences? Who were the influencers that followed you, or that you followed? What was your qibla, and did you say your prayers? Did you engage in the salat? We'll also be asked about things like the hajj, like fasting, like the charity, the khums and zakat, and the various charities that we were required to give. Now, the questioning by the angels is not merely a test of memory or words. It's actually an unveiling of one's true inner state. The questioning in the grave, brothers and sisters, is a profound spiritual examination that goes beyond mere recitation of memorized answers. It's the moment of truth that reveals the essence of one's faith in character while in this world. This questioning also unveils the deceased's true inner state, exposing the reality of their beliefs and actions during their earthly life. As I said, it's not about reciting rehearsed responses, but rather it is about the genuine conviction that resided in one's heart, that one lived. The angels' inquiries serve as a mirror, reflecting the deceased's authentic relationship with their faith, their Lord, their prophet, and everything that was sacred. For the believer, this moment becomes an opportunity to reaffirm their unwavering faith, leading to comfort and glad tidings of the angels. Conversely, for those who lived in doubt or hypocrisy, well, their true nature would become exposed, unable to hide behind false pretenses. This unveiling is a transition point, actually, between worldly life and the hereafter, where the consequences of one's choices and beliefs begins to manifest. It underscores the principle that what truly matters is not outward appearances or rote knowledge, but the sincerity and depth of one's faith as lived and internalized throughout their life. Now, you may think, well, these questions are pretty simple. A 5-year-old can answer them. But the answers cannot be fabricated or rehearsed and just memorized and regurgitated. They have to come from the core of one's being, shaped by a life of faith and sincere practice while in the life of this world. A person who truly believes in Allah, who practice Islam sincerely, and who follow the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, may Allah bless him and his family, and the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon all of them, will naturally give the right answers. While those that professed belief and practice, even if they had memorized the answers, they will not be able to articulate them in the grave. Now, what is the philosophy of these questions? Very briefly, we can say, why are these the questions that will be asked? Why are the questions not about how big my bank balance was, how much power or authority that I wielded in the world, what my status was, what my credentials, what my degrees were from university or from the seminary? Why will none of these worldly forms of success be asked about, at least at that initial level? Well, I think the answer is obvious. Right? The questions that are going to be asked go to the heart of what defines a human being's belief system and guiding principles. Who did you serve in life? What values did you live by? Whose teachings shaped your character? In essence, the questions are not just about verbal responses. They're about your identity. If Allah was truly the center of your life, if Islam was more than just a set of rituals, and if Prophet Muhammad, blessings of Allah be upon him and his family, and his immaculate family, the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, the true leaders, were genuinely your guides, then these answers will naturally emerge as you lived by the moral principles that they promulgated, and you didn't live a life chasing power or money. For the righteous, this moment is not one of fear but of comfort. The soul that lived a life of faith and goodness finds peace in the presence of the angels. They will find that their grave expands and fills with light, becoming a garden from the gardens of paradise. As the hadith notes, that one's grave can either be a pit from the pits of hell or a garden from the gardens of paradise. For the believer, it is the latter, a place of peace and rest where the angels bring nothing but good tidings. The late Abu Ja'far Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Khalid al-Barqi, in his book Al-Mahasin, he quotes from Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq, may God's peace and blessings be upon them, as them having said the following, that when a believing servant dies, 6 forms enter the grave with that person. Among them is the form that is the most beautiful in face, the most splendid in appearance, the most fragrant in smell, and the purest in image. One form stands to his right, another to his left, one in front of him, one behind him, one at his feet, and the most beautiful one stands above his head. If he is approached from his right, the one on his right protects him, and this continues for all 6 directions. Then that most beautiful form speaks and says, "Who are you? May Allah reward you with goodness on my behalf." The one on the servant's right says, "I am the salat, I am the prayer." The one on the left says, "I am zakat, I am the charity." The one in front of him says, "I am fasting." The one behind him says, "I am the hajj and the umrah that you had performed." What about the other 2? Well, the one at the feet says, "I am the kindness you showed to your brothers and sisters in faith." Then they ask to the last one, "Who are you? For you are the most beautiful in face, the most fragrant in scent, and the most splendid in appearance amongst all of us." It replies, "I am the walaya, the guardianship, the love for the family of Muhammad. May Allah's blessings be upon him and his family." Brothers and sisters, imagine the overwhelming joy and relief that floods the soul of a faithful believer in their grave as these 6 radiant forms appear, each representing their good deeds. The deceased experiences a profound sense of comfort and jubilation. The sight of these beautiful manifestations brings an indescribable peace, knowing that their worldly actions have transformed into heavenly protectors in the grave. The pinnacle of this blissful moment arrives when the most resplendent form, as we said, symbolizing their love for the Prophet's family, reveals itself. This sight fills the believer with ecstasy, confirming that their devotion and faith have borne fruit. In this instant, the grave becomes a gateway to paradise, with the deceased basking in the warmth of divine approval and anticipation of eternal bliss. Let us conclude here, and inshallah, in a latter installment, we'll go over the important question of how to prepare for the questioning in the grave. A very important task that we have to prepare for. However, let me say this, as tomorrow is the 19th of the month of Ramadan, we'll be taking a pause from the theme of death to commemorate the martyrdom of the commander of the faithful and the prince of the believers, Imam Ali, may God's peace and blessings be upon him. And so for the next 3 Ramadan reflection sessions, for the 19th, 20th, and 21st, we will focus on the theme of death, however, through the direct lens of Imam Ali, peace be upon him, and his profound teachings. Until tomorrow, we leave you with the words of peace. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.